but okay. You just let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Well, this is basically just the overview and walkthrough on the A.O. Smith domestic water heaters. You guys have 3 of these, 800,000 BTU condensing water heating units. Condensing meaning you guys are going to have, high efficient units that are going to have runoff that's going to go down the drain. I'll go through the basic components of equipment and just general practices of maintenance and whatnot. Right off the bat, any of the controllers are going to be right here on the front right of the water heaters. If you're looking at these right over here, this one is going to show kind of its status screen when you're not going into the full menu, and it's going to show you where it's running at, if everything's been satisfied as far as the tank being to the temperature that you guys want it set at. And then these 3 units will each run independently one of these 3 tanks. So each one is going to be responsible for that. Going and looking at the menu, if you want to come over here and just a little closer view, this is going to show you the different operating parameters. So it's going to have your tank set point, or the temperature set point that we're going to have each one of these tanks operating at. The 140 degrees allows for any bacterial growth to be eradicated at the source, and then once it pulls off of there, it will run back through your thermostatic mixing valve that's over on the kind of this north wall that we'll go through the last piece of equipment before we wrap it up. But basically, looking at this in a quick snapshot right here on the front, you're going to see the set point. Here is going to give you all your temperature readouts, incoming water, outgoing water, if the flame is operating, and as well as kind of what that electrical input is to be able to maintain that. And then as well as your exhaust. So the flue is just your exhaust temperature. Basic components. If you guys need to get in here, there are some key things that you'll want to maintain. First and foremost, with this being a gas-powered unit, it's something that will require gas and air mixture. Easy access, with these panels. This button right here just allows for that latch to be able to release if they need to. There's also a small Phillips head screw that can lock that in, so that way it stays secure. As far as the components, you have your basic, gas elements. So gas valves here, fan. Right down here below, you have a casing that will allow for a air filter, much like an AC unit at the house. Just maintain these, when you do an annual maintenance. And those checklists for the maintenance, those can be found within the manual or on A.O. Smith's website. So that's something that can be easily accessed if for whatever reason the manual gets damaged or lost. There are digital copies of that. So that's one of the things I bring up as far as keeping on hand. For especially Arizona, we get dust storms, we get all kinds of things. So this pulling in fresh air, from outside, it can pull in some of that dust and debris, and that's to catch that, prevent from getting clogged up. On here, it also has a spark igniter and a flame sensor. So these things just allow for it to be able to sense the operation, the sequence of operations is properly working. If not, it will shut it off. The igniter is obviously self-explanatory, but those are a couple good components to have on hand. 1 or 2 of these, given that you guys have multiple units, just kind of spare parts to keep on hand. That's kind of the basics of what I typically tend to go through in here. The heat exchanger is going to be right in here. They've designed this for easy maintenance, so again, annual checklists. Those are all detailed in the manual, and they also have instructional videos on A.O. Smith's training website. So that can be sent over to the contractor as well. So and the owner, but I know that A.O. Smith does have that listed on their website. So. of moving to the back. I'm gonna come right around on this side. I'll go through the components back here. This right here is gonna be your circulating pump. This is really what's gonna maintain operation of the water heater at the levels it needs to be keeping up with for the facility. This is going to be what's feeding here the water pressure, if you want to think about it that way, throughout the heat exchanger. If that begins to fail, then you'll see lockouts. So something to keep an eye on if there's any power failures or anything of that nature. That's typically where I tend to look first, is to make sure that that is something that's maintained. Right back up here on the piping, kind of tracking back, you're going to have your what's called the flow switch, meaning this is just going to make sure the water's flowing out of the heater and downstream properly, so it's not coming back upstream. So just making sure the old adage in plumbing, making sure stuff flows downhill. This is a temperature and pressure relief valve. If anything's exceeded in here as far as the pressure or temperature above a certain threshold, for safety precautions, it's going to purge it out of here, and that's just going to run down this piping and down into the drain. Again, like I said, this is a condensing unit, so it is going to have condensate, just much like a cold, Coke can or something. Everything's going to be sweating. So that's what really gives it its efficiencies, because it is a stainless steel heat exchanger, so you want that condensate buildup. But what's happening down here on the very lower part, you can actually see right there where it's piped out. There's a trap that allows that gray box. That's what allows that runoff from the heat exchanger, that condensate, to be able to flow through there. And then the white tube, that is the condensate kit. So basically you have a bunch of limestone rocks that's in there to be able to help neutralize any acidic water, because that condensate fluid is pretty acidic. So that's just going to run off down the drain. That's again something to maintain, easily maintained by, when you're doing your maintenance, have like pH strips. So that way it allows you to be able to check and see, okay, these are at the end of its life cycle and it needs a recharge kit, or you could always go to Home Depot and get one of the bags of limestone rock. But the one thing on those, they do have a mesh kind of bag of sorts, so it doesn't allow for the rocks to either plug up one of the holes, like the exit ports or inlet. But they're relatively inexpensive, so, and intentionally so. But other basic components, you're going to have your combustion air intake right over here, this white pipe on the left. That's going to be what's going to feed the fresh air in. And then right here, this larger pipe, in gray and then PVC pipe, is going to be your exhaust. Electrical coming off right here. Your shut-off switches for each one of these units are going to be located right back here on the back wall. So that is going to be the hard on-off, to basically the breaker for each one of these units. And then as far as the way that these are set up, this will be the wiring from the actual water heater to the pump to control that one, to bring it on, like turn it on, turn it off, so it's not constantly running and wearing out the life cycle of the pump. And then this is just your 120 volt feed to the water heater control board. The rest is all pretty self-explanatory. Gas valves right here. Your shut-off valves are going to be located on each one of the water lines, as well as the gas line. And then as far as the last piece on here, if you want to look on, actually it's going to be easier on here, I apologize. Right here, this gray data plate. Just come and step right back around here. All of your ratings, your serial numbers, model numbers, tech support for A.O. Smith, they're going to be located right there. And I point this out because a lot of times it is something that people have a struggle to find. And the first thing that they'll ask is for that model and serial number. So I always keep this on hand for each one of the units. And then additionally, The service phone number is going to be, whoops, don't put your arm on that, is going to be located over here. And it's going to be that 1-800 number. So if there's any troubleshooting or any problems, call that number first.
Okay.
They're going to be the experts who are going to be able to walk you through this and get you with the right individuals to be able to help remediate any problems they're going to have on site. So that's kind of the general overview on these three like larger water heaters. These three big giant trailer looking things they're all the hot water storage tanks. And again, if you want to come right over here, this is going to be easy to see this. And Red Oak's did a good job as far as like marking which is which on the units. But again, that same thing, model, serial number, those are going to be the key components they're going to ask. These are very basic. These are basically a big giant horizontal round storage tank.
Okay.
That's jacketed and insulated, basically to retain any or prevent any heat losses. Right, so it makes it the most efficient as far as the transfer of the heat from the water heaters to the actual storage tank. Before each one of these, you'll see there's temperature readouts on the tanks itself, and they go up and off to the building. Down here is going to be drain valves. Again, you got your floor sink that's going to be located right over here, and then for kind of ease of showing how these operate, each one of these heaters requires a tank sensor. That's just going to basically be able to allow the tank to communicate with the water heaters to say, hey, this is the temperature readout. We either need to really get a lot of hot water going, or we're okay. So when we first started this, we saw that these units were running at 10%. That's a good thing. They're intended to run at the lowest amount possible, which means cost, efficiency, and everything. Life expectancy increases, so it maintains that very, very well. But those tank sensors are landed right here, and there will be one on each one of these tanks. And right over here, I'll show you kind of how that gets set up. The wiring's much like the electrical. That's all getting updated, so it's that same conduit and being able to be piped accordingly. Put it that way. But yeah, these guys land in here like this, much like this right here. It'll have that plate. That was more for visual purposes to see where the well that sensor lands and sits in. This will go here, and then again, like the electrical will have the conduit and everything. And then the last piece of equipment we'll go through, actually before I do that, putting this back together. A lot of people sometimes struggle with this. If you're opening up that entire cabinet, you'll see that these plates are intended to be able to help make sure that this doesn't rattle. These cumbersome. They'll have hooks and stuff on here as well, so that you're able to properly store the units and bolt them back in. We'll move on to the last water heater over here.
Okay.
So this is the ASO Cyclone. Again, rating plates right here, much like the others. The temperature and pressure relief valve is located right here. Gas line, water heat, in and out, and then relief valves, and the flue pipe. Similar operation. You know that, so your temperature, your tank set point, which that tank is going to be landed right here, and then what its desired tank set point is. and then the status where it's satisfied, or meaning it's met the tank temperature. And it does have a differential, so it's not constantly like if it drops just below whatever that temperature is set at, it's not going to constantly be running on.
Okay.
It's going to have a plus or minus window, much like an AC at a house. You don't want it constantly cycling on and off just because it drops a degree.
Yeah.
So just allows for more cost efficiency and everything. So other than that, that's kind of the general overview on these guys. Controls and whatnot are highly similar here, but right behind me, that's the mixing valve, which allows for the temperature, like delivery temperature to the fixtures, to be able to kind of be worked back down to the a non-scalding set point that would be sufficient for the tenant. So with all that said, that's kind of the general overview.
Okay.